Namaskar. Today in this session we will be discussing on Ramanuja's conception of God. Ramanuja's views on God. This discussion will be classified into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Let us proceed with the basic points which I'll be discussing in part 1. In this unit of Ramanuja's concept of God, we will explain the meaning of Visishta Dvaita or qualified monism. Secondly, we will also discuss about three types of distinctions accepted by the Vedantins. Next, we will explain the meaning of Saguna Brahman, a very important concept of Ramanuja's concept of God. Next, we will be discussing on or lay down the meaning of the two states of God, namely causal state and effect state. Then we will be referring to the manifestations of God in five forms. The foremost point in Ramanuja's views on God is that he identified God with the Absolute. I repeat, Ramanuja is very clear in his statement that God is the Absolute. That means God is the absolute reality and is also called the Brahman. In Ramanuja's philosophy, God and Brahman and Absolute all are synonymous. Next important point that strikes our attention is the one contains the many. That means God, who is one, contains the many, that is the world. Material objects and finite souls are also included in God. God contains them within Himself. Hence, finite souls and the material world of objects are also real. This is monism because it points to the unity of God. But it is a form of qualified monism which is technically known as Visishta Dvaita Vada. It points to the unity, that is the Advaita of God, that possesses Vishishta of real parts, namely the conscious and the unconscious. Visishta Dvaita is a Sanskrit term that is commonly translated as qualified monism or non dualism. Literally, it means Advaita with uniqueness or qualifications. Vishishtadvaita means that all individual souls and world of objects are part of Brahman. The philosophy differs from Advaita in that it says that the world is not a Maya or illusion, but it is very much real. Individual souls retain their separate identities even after moksha. Now let us come to the meaning of Visishta Dvaita. Hence, Ramanuja's philosophy is called Visishta Dvaita, which means Advaita, that is equal to oneness. Vishishtasya, that is equal to of the Lord who is qualified. Here, the Lord, who is the ultimate reality, is qualified by a body, sarira, constituted by the animate, that is the sits, souls, and the inanimate, that is asit, universe. Next, we shall discuss about a very important point in Ramanuja's concept of God. He says that God has internal distinction. Three types of distinctions, Veda, are generally distinguished by the Vedantins. These are number one, heterogeneous distinction, which is also called Vijatiya Veda. Second, homogeneous distinction, that is called Sajatiya Veda. And thirdly, internal distinction, that is called Swagata Veda. We may give some examples of each distinctions. Say, for example, the distinction a cow has from the things of other classes such as horses, asses, etc. is called Vijatiya Veda or heterogeneous distinction. Then the distinction one cow has from other cow, that is an object of the same class, is called homogeneous distinction or Sajatiya Veda. And thirdly, the distinction that the cow has between the different parts of its own body. For example, the internal distinction the cow has between its different parts, such as between the tail and the legs of the same cow, is called internal distinction or Swagata Veda in Indian terminology. Ramanuja clearly says that God has internal distinction, that is Swagata Veda. He holds that God is devoid of heterogeneous, that is Vijatiya distinction, and homogeneous distinction as well, that is Sajatiya distinction, because there is nothing besides God either similar or dissimilar to him. But God possesses internal distinctions, that is Swagata Veda, as there are within him different conscious and unconscious substances which can be mutually distinguished. Let us come to the next very important point, where Ramanuja emphasizes that God is a Saguna Brahman. His concept of God as a Saguna Brahman. Here Ramanuja advocates the concept of Brahma. God is possessed of an infinitely good qualities such as omnipotence, omniscience, benevolence, etc. God, as the perfect personality, is devoid of all demerits and possessed all merits. He has infinite knowledge and bliss. His qualities like knowledge, power, and mercy, etc., are eternal, infinite, numberless, unlimited, undefiled, and matchless. He is knowledge to the ignorant, power to the powerless, mercy to the guilty, grace to the afflicted, parental affection to the impure, perennial attachment to those who fear separation, nearness to those who pine to see him, and kindness to all. Then we are dealing with the concept of God as the creator of the world. God, as the creator of the world, may be viewed through two stages, as cause and as effect. These are the two states of God, cause and effect state. In the state of dissolution, when objects are absent, Brahman remains with pure matter and bodiless souls in an unmanifested, that is, abhyakta form or state. This may be called the causal state, or in Indian terminology, it is called Karana Brahma. When objects are created, God becomes manifested as the world of objects and embodied souls. This is the second manifested form of God and is called the effect state, that is, Karya Brahma in Indian terminology. God as the inner regulator of the universe is another very important point in Ramanuja's concept of God. God as the inner regulator of the universe. God is the Antaryamin or regulator of the universe from within. He is the immanent inner controller, the qualified substance who is in himself changeless and is the unmoved mover of the world process. According to Ramanuja, God is not subject to misery and imperfections of the world. As the soul is not affected by the bodily changes and imperfections, so God is not affected by the changes in the universe. He remains beyond and transcends all changes of the world. In this way, Ramanuja tries to say that God does not really undergo modifications with the change of matter. So far, we have got that God is a unique reality. God can be understood or known only in religious experience or indirectly or intuitively from the testimony of those who have realized God. Ramanuja stresses so much on the authority of scriptures rather than on inferences regarding the question of knowing God. So, manifestation of God may be in five forms. God manifests Himself in the world to the souls who seek Him. There are five forms in which He manifests Himself. These are: number one, as immanent soul of the universe, He is Antaryami. God manifests Himself as Antaryami, as the immanent soul of the universe. Second, as the transcendent personal Lord, He is Narayana or Vasudeva. In this form, He is called Para or Supreme. Thirdly, as the Creator, Preserver, and Destroyer, He reveals Himself through fourfold Vyuha. Number 4, His manifestation as the Lord is called Vasudeva. Number 5, as the ruler of the cognition of the souls, He is called number 1, Buddhi Tatta. Again, He is called Sankarasana as the destroyer of the universe. As the ruler of the emotional aspect of the soul, He is called Manas Tatta. As the creator of the universe, He is called Pradyumna. As the ruler of the volitional aspect of the soul, He is known as Ahankara Tatta. As the preserver of the universe, He is known as Aniruddha. These are the five ways Ramanuja describes to cover the multifaceted personality in which God manifests or reveals Himself to the souls based on His different roles. This is all about the main important points in Ramanuja's concept of God, which we have dealt in brief way in our part 1 discussion. Now let us come to part 2. Here we will discuss some further observations. We'll try to throw light on some further points. So long in the preceding part, we have presented a brief exposition of Ramanuja's concept of God. Now, in this part, we shall try to lay down some further observation and a critical appraisal of the same with a note of conclusion. The foremost point that strikes our attention in Ramanuja's concept of God is that God is the real or the absolute, synonymous with Brahman. This is the most important point in Ramanuja's views on God. He is very clear on this point that God is the ultimate reality, God is the absolute, and God is the Brahman, so to say. He is a determinate whole. That is also very important. He is not something abstract, but is a determinate whole, maintaining his identity in and through differences. He is not a bare identity. This is the very special point in Ramanuja's Visishtadvaita concept of God. While maintaining the reality of God, Ramanuja maintains also that every finite reality is an expression of God. This is a very special point in Ramanuja's views on God, that he is very clear about maintaining the reality of God, but at the same time, he also clearly states that every finite individual, object, and soul is an expression of God. The constituent elements of the world, along with the souls, have a common bond of unity and interdependence, and this common bond is the highest spiritual principle of God. So, God serves as the common spiritual bond that binds the things of the world along with the world of finite selves. Next important point that strikes our attention is that God gives organic connection to the world. The world is organically connected because of this spiritual bond provided by God. God being the highest spiritual principle, providing the common bond of unity to the world becomes one. Souls, which are called bhokta, matter, which is called Vidya, and God are three on account of their natural differences, Swarupa Veda, but one on account of their unity, Aikyam, of the modes and substance, Prakara and Prakari. So the whole world process is an interplay between these three principles: God, the souls, and the matter. God is the ground of the universe. God is called the ground of the universe. The universe, along with the individual soul, is real as much as the God is real. The universe depends on God as its ground, its ratio ascending, but not as its cause. God is not only to be conceived as the immanent ground, because the plurality of the universe is not absorbed into the undifferentiated oneness of God. Thus, God is both the immanent and transcendent ground of the world. Ramanuja holds that though God is responsible for the world, which is imperfect, he is not touched by its imperfections. Another important point we have observed is that Ramanuja projects God as the person. So, personality is the very important aspect of God. The qualities of being, that is Sat, consciousness, that is Sit, and bliss, Ananda, give to Brahman or God a character and a personality. God is the perfect personality. God's knowledge is immediate and is not dependent on the organs of the sense. He is all knowing and has direct intuition of all. From the above discussions, it may be derived that Ramanuja's conception of God is obtained partly from the interpretations of the Upanishads and partly from the Bhagavata influence on Ramanuja. Ramanuja tries to fuse the immanent Upanishadic absolute with the transcendent God of the Bhagavata theism. So we have got that God is the supreme personality. Personality implies the power to plan and realize one's purposes. God is perfect personality since he contains all experience within himself and is dependent on nothing external to himself. As a person, the most prominent qualities of God are knowledge, power, and love, or karuna, or compassion. Out of love, God has created the world established the laws, and helps constantly all who seek to attain perfection. While each quality by itself is different from the others, they all belong to one identity and do not divide its integrity of being. Another important point is that God is the Lord of karma. It has already been mentioned that while creating the world, God has established laws. The law of karma is one such law. Though embodied, God does not suffer because He is the Lord of karma. Action, which is non intelligent and transitory, is incapable of bringing about result connected with a future time. It is God that bestows the different forms of enjoyment in this and heavenly world. Brahman or God is not touched by the suffering of souls or the mutations of matter. All evil is the result of past wrong, and God is in no way responsible for it. Above the endless succession of existence, He dwells in light where no shadow can dim His glory. Such a life is possible for the liberated spirits also. Ramanuja's conception of God is a kind of theism. Theism, in its narrow sense, means belief in God who is both immanent and transcendent and is also a person, that is, a self conscious being possessed of will, who is the object of worship and goal of religious aspiration. Ramanuja holds that God exists and there is also the plurality of souls. God is not abstract reality. He creates the world out of love and realizes himself in and through his creation. God and the individual souls are inseparable yet distinct. His philosophical position is thus neither non dualistic, Advaita, nor dualistic, that is, Dvaita. He stands midway between non dualism and dualism. From the foregoing brief discussion about Ramanuja's conception of God, it may be said that, according to Ramanuja, God is the soul of souls. He is also the soul of nature, so to speak. He identified God with the Absolute. He is the immanent inner controller, the Supreme Realm. We may thus conclude with the beautiful words of Dr. Radhakrishnan. Ramanuja's God is not an impassive absolute who looks down upon us from the height of heaven, but joins us in the experiences of our life, shares our ends, and works for the upbuilding of the world. God, as the Antaryamin, dwells in all beings and accompanies the soul in all its wanderings through heaven and hell. The God in man is like a flash of lightning in the heart of a blue cloud. God as Antaryamin is said to be the highest of all. With this theistic note on Ramanuja's views on God, we'd like to end our discussion. Thank you.